I hadn't planned to humiliate my sister that day. Honestly, I just wanted to eat a pulled pork sandwich and go home before the beer ran out. But like always, Sara couldn't leave well enough alone. The family BBQ was supposed to be casual meaning my parents' idea of peacekeeping, constant tension disguised as chicken wings and politeness. Sara and I had never been close. She was the golden daughter, married young, picture-perfect suburban home, 3 kids who looked straight off a cereal box. I was the other one. The one who'd wandered off somewhere, as our relatives like to put it. That somewhere just happened to be a classified field hospital overseas, but they didn't need to know that. As far as they were concerned, I'd left nursing school a decade ago and never really settled. Fine by me. The fewer questions, the better. So when I showed up late, hair still damp from a morning run, jeans clean but unironed, I could almost feel the judgment float across the picnic tables like heat haze. "Look who finally made it," Sara said, all saccharine and sharp. I smiled, ignoring the bait. "Had some things to finish up? Work?" she asked innocently. "Still, traveling around, something like that." She exchanged a look with her husband Mark, tall, broad-shouldered, effortlessly charming, the kind of man who could make folding lawn chairs look like a tactical operation. He gave me a polite nod. "Good to have you here," he said, voice calm and even. "You too," I replied. If he recognized me, he didn't show it. Then again, I hadn't expected him to. It had been years since I'd heard that voice barking orders over comms in the chaos of a night raid, and I hadn't expected to ever hear it again. Not here, not in a quiet backyard surrounded by paper plates and citronella candles. For the first half hour, everything stayed civil. Mom fussed, Dad told stories, the kids threw water balloons, but somewhere between the second round of drinks and the first burn of alcohol loosening tongues, Sara started her usual performance. "So, how's freelancing?" she asked, smiling too sweetly. "Busy," I said calmly. "Always." "Oh, I'm sure." She took a sip of wine and turned to her husband. "Did you know she's been doing this for years? Traveling, living out of hotels, no real base, no stability. I keep telling her, sooner or later, you need to grow roots." A few chuckles rippled around. None mean, but enough to sting. I stabbed at a grilled shrimp. "Freedom suits me." Sara grinned. "Freedom's just another word for running away." That landed like a slap. My father's jaw tensed. Mom cleared her throat, but no one stopped her. I wanted to walk away. But the problem with people like Sara is that walking away always looks like surrender. So I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Sometimes running saves more lives than staying still." She blinked, thrown off balance for the first time all afternoon. Mark glanced between us, brow furrowing slightly. He wasn't stupid. He could feel the current shifting. "Come on," Sara said, laughing it off. "Don't be so serious. We're just talking." Except we weren't. We were performing. For the family, for the neighbors, for everyone who'd already picked a side years ago. And that's when she went too far. "So," she said suddenly, feigning curiosity, "whatever happened with that army thing you used to brag about? You were going to train as a combat nurse or something, right?" I froze. "Didn't work out?" she pressed, lips curving. "I mean, it can't be easy keeping up with real soldiers." My father muttered her name like a warning, but she waved him off. "What?" "It's a fair question." The air went taut. That's when Mark's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced down, murmured something, and walked a few steps away to take the call, voice low but intense, using words that immediately brought me back years through time and dust and adrenaline. "Copy that. Bravo 6 confirming route. Over." I froze mid-breath. That voice. I turned slowly, my pulse catching in my throat. Every word, every cadence, every clipped pause. It was unmistakable. He wasn't just a veteran, he was Bravo 6. The call sign that once barked through my headset as explosions ripped through the night. My CO. My commanding officer. The man who'd led my unit through evacuations under fire. And the man who owed me his life. He hung up and looked back toward the group. Our eyes met, and in that instant, recognition dawned. His posture straightened slightly, that tiny, imperceptible shift from domestic civility to combat awareness. "Lieutenant?" he murmured. My sister squinted. Wait, what? Mark stepped closer, scanning me properly for the first time. Then he gave the faintest, sharpest smile. Didn't think I'd ever see you again. Well, small world, I said quietly. Sara looked between us, confused. You two know each other? He ignored her, still focused on me. You're Angel, aren't you? Every muscle in me went still. The call sign, one I hadn't heard since the war, cut through me like a blade and bomb all at once. Yeah, I said finally. That was me. He exhaled, shaking his head slowly. Jesus Christ, you're the reason I'm still breathing. My sister blinked rapidly. Excuse me, what? Mark turned to her, voice low but loaded. She's the medic who dragged me out when my convoy got hit outside Kandahar. If she hadn't disobeyed orders, I'd be in a box right now. Silence again. Sara's face went pale. You mean? I mean, he said evenly, she's not just some drifter. She's the most capable field medic I've ever worked with. People salute her for what she's done. He turned back to her fully now, eyes hard as steel. You mocked her? Sara stammered. I was just joking. I didn't. Apologize, he said. The quiet in his tone was more dangerous than any volume. She hesitated. Apologize. Now. The entire backyard had gone dead silent. Even the kids had stopped moving. Her lip trembled. I'm sorry, she whispered. Louder now, his command voice unyielding. Say it like you mean it. She looked at me, cheeks burning red. I'm sorry, okay? I gave a faint, polite nod. Thank you. Mark's eyes stayed on her for a moment longer before softening. You should know better. Then he looked back at me. Good to see you, Angel. He gave me a sharp nod. Not the casual nod of a brother-in-law, but the formal salute between soldiers who've shared the same battlefield. And just like that, the balance in the yard shifted forever. I wish I could say that moment satisfied me completely, that watching her crumble erased years of resentment. But justice, I'd learned, rarely feels clean. It comes wrapped in awkward silences, unspoken histories, and the gnawing question of what now? Because Sara didn't just lose face that day. She lost certainty, the story she told herself about being the better daughter, and once people lose their story, they'll do anything to get it back. The weeks that followed were strange. She called me twice. I didn't answer. Mom tried to mediate, saying, your sister didn't mean any harm, but I think even she knew the dynamic had reversed permanently. Mark sent a short email a month later. Lieutenant, appreciate the grace you showed her. That wasn't easy. Hope to share a beer sometime. My treat. Respect, Bravo 6. I replied simply, always an honor, Commander. Stay safe. Angel. But that wasn't the end of the story, not by far. Because power doesn't just shift quietly, it ripples. And when people built their self-worth on looking down on you, watching you rise, becomes unbearable. And Sara was not the kind of woman to suffer in silence. Humiliation burns slow. You can see it in a person's eyes before the rage ever reaches their voice. For the next few family gatherings, Sara hid it well. She smiled, hosted, and acted like nothing had happened that day at the BBQ. But her laughter had that forced sharpness, like glass cracking under pressure. I wasn't fooled. Humiliation never dies quietly. It metastasizes into obsession, and I could feel her watching me every time I walked into a room. It started small. Little comments at family dinners. Some people love talking about their hero days. Must be hard adjusting to normal life after all that attention. Then came the whispers. An aunt mentioned hearing that I had trouble keeping jobs. A cousin asked whether field work messed with my head. It was strategic, subtle enough to sound like concern, but poisonous in context. I didn't respond. That was the difference between me and her. She fought for validation, I fought for truth. But she wasn't done. A few months later, word got back to me through an old friend in a local veterans network that Sara had contacted one of their board members, asking if they really knew who they were associating with. She said there were rumors about you, my friend told me cautiously, that maybe you exaggerated your deployment record. I almost laughed. The irony was too much. For years, I'd stayed silent about what I'd done overseas, leaving others to believe whatever they wanted. And now the one person who'd mocked me for being a nobody was calling strangers, trying to rewrite my history as too good to be true. Classic projection. "She's my sister," I said to my friend. "She's angry because she lost control of the narrative." My friend hesitated. "You want me to shut this down?" "No," I said. "Let it play out, because sometimes the best revenge is timing and patience." What Sara didn't know was that her husband, Mark, had heard about her little campaign almost immediately. The veteran community isn't large, and word travels fast when someone starts poking at distinguished service records. That's how I got the call. His tone was clipped, professional, commander mode. "We need to talk." Privately. We met 2 days later at a coffee shop near the naval base. He looked tired, the kind of tired that came from carrying two loyalties pulling in opposite directions. "I didn't want to believe it," he said quietly, "but people have been forwarding me messages." Screenshots. "It's her," I nodded. "I know." He exhaled sharply. "She's jeopardizing my reputation by extension. Hell, some of the brass have seen your file. They know who you are, what you did." "She doesn't," I said, sipping my coffee. "Not really." "That's what terrifies her." Mark rubbed his face. "I can't control her forever, but I'll handle this." "No," I said. "Let me." His eyes met mine. Understood. The plan came together naturally. Revenge doesn't need brute force, only precision. I decided to host a fundraiser, something Sara couldn't resist attending. It was for a veterans rehabilitation charity sponsored by a defense association that Mark occasionally consulted for. The perfect stage. When the invitations went out, I made sure to mention that Mark had agreed to co-host as a representative of the SEAL community. His name carried weight, hers carried curiosity. I knew she wouldn't stay home. Not when she smelled attention. The night of the event, the ballroom glittered under soft lighting, dress uniforms, medals, conversation. I wore a sleek black dress with my service pin discreetly on the lapel. When Sara arrived, she looked flawless. Silver gown, perfect hair, smile carved from tension. Mark walked beside her, neutral as stone. "Hi, sis," she said brightly, air kissing my cheek. "This is quite the crowd you've gathered." "Thank you," I said smoothly. "I'm glad you came." "Oh, I wouldn't miss it for the world." She meant I came to watch you fail. Perfect. Halfway through the evening, I took the stage. "Good evening, everyone," I began, voice calm even. "Tonight we honor the unspoken heroes, the medics, engineers, and logistics officers whose names rarely make the headlines but whose courage sustains every mission." I spoke about camaraderie, sacrifice, and identity, not mine, but all of ours. And then, carefully, I shifted tone. "Some of you have asked why I keep quiet about my service record," I said. "Because honor doesn't need an audience, but transparency matters." So tonight, I'm proud to share the story of a team I served with, a unit that went above and beyond under the leadership of Commander Mark Nichols. The crowd applauded as Mark stood, nodding once. I smiled at Sara's confused face. This unit saved countless lives through rapid medical evacuation under fire. I'd like to acknowledge them with footage recently declassified by the Department of Defense. The screen came alive behind me. Grainy night footage, helmet cams, chaotic scenes of evacuation under gunfire. At first, it was just shadows and sound. Then one clear frame froze. Me, hauling a wounded man through smoke as a voice over comms yelled, "Angel, fall back!" The clip ended on silence and standing applause. From the front table, Mark rose again, his voice low but carrying authority. For those who don't know, that voice shouting in the clip was mine. She saved my life that night. Several others, too. The audience burst into applause again. Longer, thunderous. I looked directly at Sara then. Her face had gone ghost pale. She knew. Everyone in that room knew she was the one who'd questioned it, the one who tried to tear it down. Without saying her name, I thanked every family member who reminded me that humility and patience reveal truth in their own time. Half the room turned subtly toward her. Sara didn't speak to anyone for the rest of the evening. She left early, silent tears staining her makeup. Mark stayed until closing, thanking guests before joining me near the exit. "She's devastated," he said quietly. "You didn't have to destroy her." "Yes," I said. "I did." He nodded slowly. "Fair enough." For weeks afterward, she disappeared from social gatherings. Mom called, fretting. "She's not herself lately. She says everyone's gossiping." I didn't correct her. I didn't need to. You can't gossip about truth. Still, a small pit of unease settled in my chest. Revenge always costs something. Rage tastes like satisfaction until it cools, and then you taste the ash beneath. So one evening, I decided to visit her. Her house looked smaller than I remembered, blinds drawn, kids at a neighbor's. She opened the door slowly, like expecting a storm. "Why are you here?" she whispered. "Because I wanted to see you." Her shoulders were tense, defensive. "Congratulations, you embarrassed me in front of everyone I know." I didn't answer that. Instead, I said, "You started the fight, Sara. I finished it." She blinked, tears threatening again. "You could have just told me. You could have just said who you were." I sighed. "I tried in my own way. You never wanted to know me. You wanted to classify me, either a failure or a threat. You can't love someone you're trying to outrank." She looked down. "I didn't mean to." "Yes, you did," I said softly. "But I forgive you anyway." Her eyes snapped up, searching mine like that word was foreign. "Why?" "Because forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means I'm done letting you own the story." She covered her face, shoulders shaking. I turned to leave, but she said my name. Not mockingly, not bitterly this time. Just a tremor of regret. "I wish I'd known the kind of woman you became." "You did," I said quietly. "You just chose not to see her." Months later, her marriage fractured. Not because of me directly, but because truth exposes everything it touches. Mark couldn't reconcile the woman who'd risked her reputation for jealousy with the one he'd married to build a life. He filed for separation quietly, respectfully. The kids stayed with him most weekends. Sara moved out of state soon after, chasing a fresh start. Mom said she was doing better, humbler, quieter, working in volunteer outreach. I believed it. Maybe some breaks are blessings. A year later, I received a small parcel. No return address, just my name in familiar handwriting. Inside was a single dog tag, old and scratched, engraved faintly, "Angel, you earned it." For a moment, I thought Mark had sent it. But when I looked closely, there was another note folded beneath, "For the sister who saved strangers but lost me once. Thank you for teaching me how to start again. S." I held it in my palm for a long while before setting it on my desk beside my service pin. People talk about revenge like it's destruction. But sometimes, the real revenge is leaving the person who hurt you alive, changed, humbled, and forced to watch you thrive. Because when the smoke clears, power isn't who wins, it's who heals. 3 years later, the world had changed again. Or maybe just me. The Veterans Rehabilitation Program I co-led had grown into something bigger than I'd ever planned. What began as local fundraisers had expanded into a national initiative: physical therapy, trauma counseling, reintegration training, the kind of work that healed others even as it quietly kept healing me. Most days were routine now. Mornings began with coffee strong enough to wake mountains and ended with long walks along the beach near the facility. I liked the predictability. After a lifetime of chaos, peace felt like both rebellion and reward. Then one day, a message arrived on the clinic's general inbox, an RSVP for the annual Remembrance Gala we held every November. My assistant read it out loud, half smiling. "Commander Nichols, +1. I froze. It had been almost 3 years since I last saw Mark, since the fundraiser that had revealed everything. His and Sara's separation had finalized quietly, cleanly, without spectacle. I'd heard from mutual contacts that he'd gone on to instruct new SEAL recruits and help design trauma prevention protocols for medics. The perfect symmetry to his past. And apparently, now he was coming to my gala. The night of the event, the ballroom was bathed in golden light. Rows of tables draped in navy cloth, silver ribbons crossing each other like intersecting lives. I wore my dress blues, formal and understated, medals pinned exactly where regulations said they should be, though every one of them still felt heavier than it looked. I didn't know what to expect from seeing him again, but I knew what I wouldn't do: stumble. At 1900, the doors opened and guests began to flow in. Familiar faces, veterans, nurses, community donors, and then, right at the edge of that tide, Mark appeared. He looked different, slight gray in his beard, shoulders less militant, more human. His posture still carried command, but softened, the way men sometimes look once they've stopped proving things. Beside him stood a woman, dark hair, gentle eyes, maybe early 40s. I recognized the body language instantly, calm, not performative. She wasn't here to compete. She was here beside him, not behind him. When his gaze finally found mine across the room, he smiled, a small smile but genuine, the kind you offer an equal. He mouthed, "Angel." I nodded once in acknowledgement. Later that night, after speeches and toasts, as the crowd mingled, he approached. "Lieutenant," he greeted, voice low, warm. "You look every inch the colonel you were always meant to be." "Hardly," I said with a grin. "Still just me." His companion extended a hand. "I'm Elena, Mark's girlfriend," he finished, looking amused. "She insists on being introduced as her own person." "Smart woman," I said, shaking her hand. "I've heard a lot about you," she said kindly, "though I'll admit, half of it sounded like legend." I shrugged. "Legend's just trauma softened by memory." Elena laughed. "He did warn me you talk like a poet sometimes." "Hazard of spending too long in MRE tents at midnight," I replied. Mark chuckled quietly, nostalgia flickering across his face. "You never did lose that edge. Comes in handy." But there was more he wanted to say, and I could feel it building between us, the unspoken weight of shared experience and unfinished conversation. We stepped out onto the terrace after a while. The city lights glittered below like stars that had simply decided to live on Earth for good. He leaned against the railing. "How are you, really?" "Functional," I said truthfully. "Flaws acknowledged. Still learning to sleep through quiet." He smiled faintly. "Same. The silence used to bother me more than gunfire ever did. Because silence lets memory breathe." He nodded. "Exactly." We stood there for a long moment before he finally said, "Sara emailed me last year." I turned, surprised. "Oh, she's doing better?" "Works for a nonprofit that supports displaced families. She mentioned your name, said she's trying to live in a way that would make peace with it." I looked out at the lights again. Good for her. She also said she thinks about that BBQ constantly. Says she deserved to be brought down, that she needed it. "That's not satisfaction for me," I said quietly. "That's recovery for her." Mark studied me carefully. "You really forgave her, didn't you?" "I don't believe in forgiving for closure," I said. "I believe in forgiving so the story stops owning you." He chuckled softly. "You changed." "Maybe I was always like this," I murmured. "You just met me in the years when survival looked like hard edges." We talked for almost an hour, about leadership, about transition, about what it meant to age out of war. When he finally said goodbye, he reached into his pocket and handed me a small envelope. "What's this?" "A transfer order," he said. "Personal, not official. There's a young medic in my unit, reminds me of you. She's reckless, brilliant, raw. I think she needs to meet someone who's lived the full spectrum. Would you mentor her?" I smiled softly. "You know I can't resist saving strays. That's why I asked." After they left, I stayed behind to help staff clean up leftover tables. The ballroom felt different from when I'd entered. Not empty, just full of echoes that didn't hurt anymore. On one of the tables near the back, someone had left a wallet-sized photo, the kind you print from an old digital camera. I recognized it instantly. It was from that first BBQ years ago. Me at the grill, laughing awkwardly, smoke curling around my hair. In the background, Sara, arms crossed, hiding her own uncertainty behind mockery. I flipped the photo over. On the back, in shaky handwriting, were 5 words. "You were always the brave one." There was no signature, didn't need to be. I slipped it into my jacket pocket. The next morning, I drove to the coast for sunrise. The sea had always been my reset button. Standing there in the cold, salt wind, I realized something. Revenge had ended the day I stopped seeking validation and started living like my truth didn't need defense. What came after wasn't victory, it was evolution. The revenge wasn't what I did to Sara, it was what I became because of her. Because she had tried to make me smaller, and instead, she forced me to grow beyond recognition. Years later, when Veterans Week celebrations were televised and young recruits sometimes called me ma'am in passing without realizing I was the same angel from those archived mission reports, I understood what legacy really meant. Legacy wasn't medals or headlines. It wasn't vengeance dressed as justice, it was peace that didn't apologize for having teeth. Occasionally, I still hear that night in my head. Sara's laughter, the long silence after Mark's voice cut through the air, apologize. Now, but the version I remember most isn't the humiliation. It's what came after. All the small, stubborn choices to heal instead of rot. All the days spent teaching others that dignity can be rebuilt from ashes. All the moments I smiled quietly to myself, realizing that the girl who stood at that barbecue table had no idea she'd one day turn her sister's cruelty into closure for hundreds of wounded souls. And sometimes on the anniversary of our parents' passing, I still meet Sara for coffee. She looks older now, thinner, humbler, lighter in spirit. The first time we met after everything, she cried before I could speak. "I spent years trying to outshine you," she said. "But you were never competing." I smiled. "No, I was surviving." "Do you think it's too late to be sisters again?" she asked. "It's never too late," I said. "It just takes new definitions." Now, when she hugs me goodbye, she holds on a little longer. Not from guilt anymore, from recognition. We're not enemies. We're two veterans of a war that had nothing to do with battlefields. Sometimes life gives you enemies not to destroy you, but to teach you how to become unbreakable. And sometimes, revenge evolves into something cleaner, the kind of power that doesn't need to be proven, just lived. Years later, on my office wall, a shadow box hangs quietly. Inside it, my old service patch. That scratched dog tag that read, "Angel, you earned it," and the faded photo from the BBQ. Below them, a single engraved line reads, "Strength isn't silent, it's steady." Every time a trainee asks what it means, I tell them the truth. It means that being underestimated is a weapon, if you know when not to use it. When people ask if I'm proud of the revenge, I tell them I'm proud of the peace, because revenge is about them, peace is about me.